WWF One Night Only was a UK exclusive pay-per-view event that took place on September 20th, 1997, so this was in between the Ground Zero and Bad Blood in Your House pay-per-views. One Night Only was quite a big deal. The WWF partnered up with Sky Television to offer an exclusive pay-per-view for the UK market, something that had never been done before. In order to maximise pay-per-view sales, the WWF booked a European Championship match to headline the show. Champion Davey Boy Smith, the British Bulldog, taking on Shawn Michaels of D-Generation X. The outcome of the main event was highly unpredictable, and to this day, fans debate over the finish and whether the WWF done the right thing during their first UK exclusive pay-per-view event. Today we're going to look at the British Bulldog versus Shawn Michaels at One Night Only. Davey Boy Smith was crowned the first ever European champion after winning a tournament held in Germany. The tournament finals took place on February 26, 1997, but didn't air on American television until March 3rd on Monday Night Raw. The final match between Davey and Owen Hart is definitely worth your time. The overall broadcast quality leaves a lot to be desired, but once you get past the presentation, you're left with a good, pure wrestling match. Davey would proudly wear the European Championship for the months that followed. The belt was featured heavily in the summer house show loop, but quite a few European title matches also happened on TV. In a way, the European title initially just felt like Davey Boy's belt. In 1997, and during Davey's run in the Hart Foundation, the British Bulldog became synonymous with the European title. When Sky Television and the WWF agreed to broadcast a special UK exclusive pay-per-view in September of 97, it made sense for Davey Boy Smith to headline the show. 5 years prior, the British Bulldog's Intercontinental title win at SummerSlam 92 had provided British wrestling fans with a genuine feel-good moment, and even though times had changed, Smith was still loved by fans in the UK. One Night Only was kind of a homecoming for the British Bulldog. Smith had, of course, worked plenty of UK shows after SummerSlam and Wembley, but what you need to understand here is that One Night Only was heavily promoted in the UK. While fans in America may look at One Night Only and see the event as a glorified house show, here in the UK the advertising and promotion for the event was quite extraordinary. I specifically remember seeing newspaper advertisements for the event, something that wasn't done here for typical shows, and you couldn't watch any other programme on Sky Sports without seeing advertisements for One Night Only. As a quick side note, while One Night Only was marketed as a UK exclusive show, it was also available in Canadian pay-per-view markets. To explain this, Bret Hart said he had blocked the United States from getting the show due to a clause in his contract. Good stuff. The WWF also done a big promotional tour, sending talent to British talk shows to tell potential viewers that they should order One Night Only on Sky Box Office. Naturally, the British Bulldog appeared on radio shows and television broadcasts, and Davey Boy promised the British public that he would defeat Shawn Michaels at the special event while dedicating the upcoming victory to his sister Tracy. Tracy was battling cancer at the time. I don't think I need to talk about Shawn Michaels in 1997 too much here because you guys already know the story. But to summarise, Shawn had turned heel after SummerSlam 97 while aligning himself with Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Chyna and Ravishing Rick Rude. This group was known as D-Generation X, and their main rivals were Bret Hart and the Hart Foundation, of which Davey Boy was a member. Shawn's rivalry with Bret Hart had reached its boiling point during the summer of 97. Political manoeuvring and backstage fighting had completely tarnished HBK and the Hitman's relationship, both on a personal and professional level, and there was a very real dislike between the two men, to put it lightly. Something I want to point out though, and something I find interesting, is the fact that the Shawn Michaels versus Davey Boy Smith match at One Night Stand was announced before Shawn turned heel. So for example, if you watch SummerSlam 97, you'll hear Vince and Jim Ross talk about the special UK pay-per-view while announcing the Michaels versus Smith main event. So we have the Hart Foundation and D-Generation X at each other's throats as we go into One Night Only, held in the Birmingham NEC Arena. Bret would have his hands full with The Undertaker in the semi-main spot, while Davey Boy Smith and Shawn Michaels would close the show. The crowd who showed up at One Night Only were excellent as they got treated to a, quote, proper WWF show. One Night Only was very different when compared to other live events that the WWF brought to the UK during this time period. Many UK fans watched watched American pay-per-view events with envy, wanting to be part of these big shows but never getting the chance to do so. And again, American audiences may look at One Night Only and think that it's nothing special, but for fans in the United Kingdom, it was big. The heavy promotion, the TV advertising, newspapers, magazines, the UK was finally getting something like a WWF pay-per-view event after waiting for 5 years. So the audience that sold out the NEC were excited and ready for action. Fans were treated to appearances from Bret, Hart, The Undertaker, Vader, Mick Foley and Hunter Hearst Helmsley, just to name a few before the main event. And throughout the show, the UK fans were very vocal and they were very loud. They definitely had their favourite superstars and they let everyone know who they liked and who they didn't. The story of the British Bulldog versus Shawn Michaels was played out through the entire show. The event opened up with a video showing us a young Davey Boy Smith while Vince McMahon talked about the Bulldog coming home to defend the European Championship. Smith had a pre-taped interview that was also shown in the middle of the event where he once again dedicated his match to his sister Tracy, and Davey talked about how he dropped weight in order to keep up with the much faster Shawn Michaels. Shawn had a backstage promo spot just before the match where HBK said he would win the European Championship and he had become the very first Grand Slam winner in WWF history. The audience response was of course very negative towards Shawn, but what's so shocking about One Night Only and the European Championship main event is the fact that Shawn Michaels was absolutely right here. HBK was going into the Birmingham NEC and he was booked to defeat the British Bulldog in the middle of the ring. I don't think anyone could have expected what was going to happen here. Let's first look at the match and then we'll talk about how and why this all happened. I'll give you a small spoiler though, it was all Shawn Michaels' idea. Shawn comes to the ring and initially fans are excited to see the Heartbreak Kid, in particular the female fans. While kissing girls of a questionable age and sticking a British Bulldog action figure down his tights, HBK gets a decent crowd response, but remember the UK were starved of big superstars and big shows at the time. Practically everyone got a decent ovation at One Night Only and it wasn't until the matches played out where you would hear the cheers and the boos. Don't worry though, this audience would soon be turning very cold towards Shawn Michaels. Davey comes out with his sister Tracy. It does look like it's a little too much for her to be honest, but Davey had dedicated the match to her and we can only assume that Davey wanted to give his sister a moment that she would remember. I'll just mention here too that Tracy passed away in 1999 at the age of 26. Davey gets a thunderous ovation though a massive Bulldog chant breaks out as Davey holds up the Union Jack. Shawn pretends to leave the arena only to check himself out on the Titantron before returning. Shawn must have been loving all of this. HBK knew what was going to happen. The more they chanted for the Bulldog, the more heat the finish was going to generate. As unsavoury as Shawn Michaels was during mid to late 1997, his in-ring heel work was unrivalled. Shawn's athletic ability mixed with his animated theatrics made for great television. The man you love to hate, he knows he's good and he's not afraid to show it. And his defensive and selling abilities are just as entertaining as his offensive skills. Shawn's backstage conduct would never win him any awards, but his in-ring work definitely would. With that being said, Davey Boy is no slouch in this match either. The Bulldog is a bit of a strange case when it comes to main events. Sometimes he was average and sometimes he was really good. And the Davey we got at this UK pay-per-view was really good, especially in the first 5 minutes or so. The bout starts with Shawn constantly getting overpowered. A great spot sees Davey and Shawn tying up and HBK trying to use the top turnbuckle to his advantage, only for Davey to throw Shawn from one side of the ring to the other. Shawn plays up and he pretends to leave the arena once again, but Davey unceremoniously dumps HBK back into the ring. The audience were getting what they wanted here as Davey lifts Shawn up above his head, teasing the crowd here by going from one side of the ring to the other. So far, so good. A back body drop sends Shawn over the top rope and this gets a great pop. Davey then slows the match down by bringing Shawn to the mat. Shawn fights his way out and he gets things warmed up by poking Davey in the eye, but the Bulldog answers with a big sit down powerbomb. Not a typical typical British Bulldog move, but it looked pretty impressive. Davey flattened Shawn by reversing a crucifix pin attempt with a Samoan drop, but then the Bulldog makes a costly mistake. He applies a surfboard stretch while keeping his own shoulders to the mat. Referee Earl Hebner has no choice but to count a pin attempt, forcing the Bulldog to release the hold. Davey argues with the referee and Shawn takes advantage by blindsiding the Bulldog. Davey tries to fight back and he delivers a vertical suplex, but then we see Rick Rude making his way to the ring. It's from this point onwards where the match begins falling apart. As soon as Rude comes to the ring, he begins interfering in the match. Davey Boy gets rammed into the ring post on the outside and Shawn follows up with a double axe handle from the top rope. Fans begin looking to the entranceway, waiting for a Hart Foundation member to come out and even the odds, but it doesn't happen. Instead, Rude is allowed to deliver more punishment on the outside. It's fine though, right? I mean, this is only a little UK house show and Davey Boy will eventually overcome these odds, giving fans a reason to go home happy and all that stuff. Shawn applies a sleeper hold in the middle of the ring, but Davey gets out with a side suplex. Shawn stays on the offense with a forceful Irish whip into the corner, and then we see the short arm scissors that Shawn applies on rare occasions. Davey is once again able to show off his power by lifting Shawn while the arm scissors is still applied, drilling Shawn's back into the mat. The two men then dash into each other and both competitors are on the mat. The audience begins booing loudly as Triple H and Chyna make their way to the ring. As the crowd chants, "We want Bret," Davey begins mounting a comeback, but it's now only a matter of time before Triple H and Chyna get involved. The crowd wants the Hart Foundation to come out and even the odds, but again, it doesn't happen. Eventually, Shawn gets the upper hand. We see not one, but two diving elbows from the Heartbreak Kid. But when Shawn goes for the super kick, Davey is able to reverse it. The Bulldog scoops up Shawn for the running power slam, but Rick Rude takes hold of Davey's leg. Davey is able to get away from Rude and Shawn gets clotheslined over the top rope, but things go from bad to worse when the fight spills to the outside. Davey scoops up Shawn once again for a running power slam, but he falls over, catching his foot on the guardrail, and this results in the Bulldog taking sweet chin music. The other members of DX try to force the guardrail further into Davey's knee before Triple H nails the pedigree. Still no sign of the Hart Foundation. Shawn then takes Davey's knee brace off and he throws it to the Bulldog's wife Diana and sister Tracy, and then Shawn applies a figure 4 leg lock. Hunter and Chyna help Shawn apply pressure while the Bulldog screams in agony. The Bulldog makes his way to the ropes, but Rick Rude punches Davey behind the referee's back. The figure 4 remains locked in and the fans are now on the edge of their seats, just waiting for Davey to power out. A loud Bulldog chant breaks out in the arena. Hunter and Chyna continue to assist HBK, and eventually the referee is forced to stop the match. That's right, Shawn Michaels just beat the British Bulldog in the middle of the ring in England, and the fans didn't know how to take it. Immediately after the bell rings, fans start throwing garbage into the ring. Shawn grabs a microphone and he says, "Alright, all you limeys, I want you to take a look at your champion and then take a look at the new Grand Slam winner. Hart family, this is for you. And Diana Smith, my sweetheart, this one is especially for you, baby." Triple H tells Davey Boy to scream for his country as Shawn applies the figure 4 once again. Diana gets in the ring and she tries to stop Shawn by using Davey's knee brace, but Chyna grabs Diana. Finally, after all this time, Owen and Bret show up, but D-Generation X quickly get out of the ring. The fans are now livid as Shawn celebrates his victory. The Heartbreak Kid rubs it in everyone's face with an over-the-top celebration that gets him even more heat. It really wasn't the outcome that people expected, especially for a UK show like this. Davey Boy Smith and the rest of the Hearts had been completely humiliated in the middle of the ring, while Shawn laughed and danced all the way back to the United States. If Shawn wanted to get the audience fired up, well, he done a stellar job at One Night Only. The atmosphere after the final bell is extremely tense, and if Shawn hung around for much longer, well, who knows what could have happened. The show goes off the air with a defeated British Bulldog trying to pull himself back to his feet. So what happened here? Practically everyone in the NEC Arena would have bet money that Davey would win the match. It was pretty much a given that if the WWF were coming back to the UK to put on a big show, then it's natural that the audience would get sent home happy, but this didn't happen. Well, as mentioned earlier, it was Shawn's idea to flip the finish. Davey was booked to win the match, but on the day of the pay-per-view, Shawn approached Vince McMahon and the creative team, and he requested that the finish got changed. This is what Shawn wrote in his book. Before we could get to my rematch with Undertaker at Bad Blood in October, we had to get through a special pay-per-view that was being held in Birmingham, England on September 20th. Davey Boy Smith was the European champion and he was from Birmingham. That isn't correct, by the way, but anyway. I told the creative team, if you want to get me some heat, have me screw him for the title in his hometown. They loved the idea. Davey was so over in England and he never lost there. Screwing him out of the title in front of his hometown fans was a good business decision because I would generate a ton of heat. Davey never once expressed to us that he was upset with our plans, but he wasn't the kind of guy who would just say anything to your face. He would do it in the back. He wasn't mean. That's just the way he was brought up in the business. You bury guys behind their back. It's my understanding that Bret really got him wound up about losing in his hometown. For Bret, the most important thing was not about what was right for business, but about looking like the good guy in the eyes of the wrestling industry. Bret Hart wrote about the match in his book too. The Hitman said, "Before the show I talked with a little boy who'd been burned in a fire. His ears were gone. Then I found time to say hello to Davey's family. Davey had made the huge mistake of promising in interviews with the British tabloids that he'd win his title match for his sister Tracy, who was dying of cancer. He'd been told he was going over, but on the day of the show, Vince and Shawn changed the outcome. Davey was devastated. Shawn had openly bragged about how he was not doing jobs for anyone, but nobody wanted to believe he had such nerve. This went against the code of all wrestlers. Usually Vince or Pat would give me my finishes, but now Shawn, Hunter and Briscoe were there to oversee. Something was going very wrong." Chyna grabbed Diana from behind as Owen and I finally charged down the ramp, with everyone wondering where the hell we'd been all this time. As I pretended to help the wounded Davey boy back to the dressing room, we passed the burned little boy and Davey's sister Tracy, who was terribly upset and crying. I thought, in wrestling, never make a promise you can't deliver. I saw the light die in Davey's eyes that day, darkness seeping into a heart that was giving out. To give you a little more insight on how this all affected Davey Boy, here's another quote from Bret's book. Bret's talking about a house show here, I believe, where he was booked into a match with The Undertaker. "That night, during my match with Taker, I did my usual job of taking a severe beating. So severe, in fact, that an overwrought, mentally challenged kid hit the ring to protect me. When I came back through the curtain, still wearing my belt, he broke away from the police in tears to hug me and tell me that he loved me. For some reason, this scene was too hard for Davey to bear, and he told Lanza he was going home. For how long, no one knew." This got me curious and I decided to look up Davey Boy's work schedule after One Night Only, and right enough, Davey disappeared from WWF TV following a house show in Toledo, Ohio for around 2 weeks. I went back to Bret's book and yes, Bret confirms the date and location. I might get some negative feedback on this, but honestly, I think Shawn winning the match was the right thing to do. Now, I don't agree about changing the match outcome on the day of the show. Davey ended up looking really bad after telling anyone who would listen that he was going to win. And of course, because Davey thought he was going over, he dedicated the match to his sick sister. It's pretty much guaranteed that if Davey knew he was going to lose, then he wouldn't have dedicated the match. The way Shawn went about getting the finish changed is just plain wrong, and someone politicking to get what they want is always a crappy thing to do. No one is defending Shawn Michaels here. But consider this, if Davey won the match at One Night Only, then no one would remember it. It would have been another run-of-the-mill international show with a predictable outcome. The reaction that Shawn got after the match may have been extremely hostile, but it was also extremely different, and that's what wrestling shows need to be, or else we end up where we are today. You also need to think of Davey Boy's position within the World Wrestling federation at the time. The WWF is an American product, its main customer base is in America, and the show's going to continue in the United States long after this One Night Only show. Davey may have been a hero in the UK for one night, but back in the States he was straight into the mid-card once again. With Shawn's rivalry with the Hart Foundation, HBK could go back to the States and brag about taking the European title away in the Bulldog's backyard, and the amount of hate Shawn gathered would have been way more effective than Davey returning to the States, still the European champion. Again, I have to stress, the way the WWF and Shawn Michaels went about things was truly awful, and it was very underhanded to say the least. But I do think Shawn winning at One Night Only had more upside than Davey going over. One Night Only is now remembered as the show where HBK won the European title while pissing off an entire country. It helped to make One Night Only a show that fans wanted to see years later, and it helped One Night Only stand out in a year that was filled with good pay-per-views. It was even immortalised in a WWF 2K game. That's something that doesn't happen for UK shows, and I think it's safe to say that this wouldn't have happened if Davey Boy won the match in a predictable manner. The match outcome also didn't affect the WWF's positioning with Sky TV. It was actually a success that led to even more UK exclusive pay-per-views, including Capital Carnage, Rebellion and the Insurrection shows. It's been reported that the idea here was for the Bulldog to return to England the following year and win the European title back, but due to the Montreal incident, that of course didn't happen. Instead, there was practically nothing set up for Davey Boy when he did return to the United States. He became disheartened with wrestling, and as Bret says, and as we proved with the dates, Davey Boy went back home for a while to get his head straight. One Night Only was probably Davey's most prolific match of 1997, and it's kind of a shame that he left the company with such a bad taste in his mouth. Davey would return to the WWF after Montreal and after his second WCW stint, but we'll look at that another time. As for the European title, well, Shawn didn't really care much for the championship after it granted him the name of Grand Slam champion. Shawn would drop the belt to his buddy Triple H by laying down for the future King of Kings in the middle of the ring, adding another title to the long list of championships that Shawn didn't drop in a traditional sense. One Night Only though, in the HBK vs Bulldog main event, is still very much worth your time just to see the crowd reaction afterwards, and just to see a logical wrestling outcome getting thrown out the window in favour of generating hate. Much like the Montreal match featuring Bret and Shawn, the outcome overshadows the in-ring action, and rightfully so, but take the time to watch the bout itself and you'll also find an entertaining wrestling match. As always, thank you for watching.